Equipment Church of Christ. It's got an echo. The fundraiser for the Georgia coming up March 6th at 6 p.m. at 4. I've got tickets. If anybody, you can do that. I got prices for that. Quick, but I'm in the church building, and the elders are listening. Say that. Forms on the right. Forest Park Church, and he'd be having to have services to put him on the prayer list here when our prayers are uttered, if that'll be mentioned. Any other updates, subtractions we need to make, improvements? Shake your hand. Yes. That's what he says. The Suttles set for Drew. It's going around. Know about. Drew, lead us in a word of prayer, please. Yes.
Father, this first opportunity we have now in this period, it's an honor to be. We're so very thank you for Gene. Puts in to prepare for this class, to be attentive, and apply much to our
lectureship. Back, young man, he's late 20s. He's going to stay for the weekend. He says, "No, I got to get home and get some sermons up. I've got to stay." To worry about it. He says, "Man, I got 42 backed up. He had that about 40 years. You will." All right. Chapter 5, verse 6, verse 7 is, and we're dealing with the sermon, very in church and church individual Christians, because it tells us in some very detail what is of Christian living. Then how we are in your lives. It's a statement of character, fundamental principles, citizens of the kingdom establish. The religious institution, when I'm talking with relatives, Christians, that the institution read about upon the New Testament. To phrase it that way, because it gets out of better standing at work, and he talks about church. Well, I don't have one. I've been asked, well, who? When they well, the same group that Paul did. Well, I'm a faithful one. You know, I'm not a Christ preacher. Church of Christ. I am a Christian, a member of the body here in Quitman at this denominational talk, because we're not a denomination. We are not among many. We are a church. Oh, that's awful pricey. No. And supposed to behave. Drew's been preaching on and helping this idea of, and that you need to those outlines that he's simply as he has distinction. This like to. What I refer to as Christianity. I'm not anybody. What I want to do is draw people's attention to what the Bible actually teach. Read, what do those words mean? If you were to read words in an article and they did to anybody or anything, how would you interpret that? He said, I will build my church. Phrase, what are you talking about? The Lord added to the church should be saved. What about that? You read another passage, faith one. Would you? How many is one? If there's one, the Lord adds a church which tell people that's the one I. Whichever one the Lord is the correct one. Now, which
One that's written.
exactly the one that's written? Well, no, it's not all of them. There's one faith. Faith and his faith, and then anybody else having their faith. The one faith. That's what I want to put that one in, because the one that is the true, actual one, to it. This one that Jesus gives us here. It comes statement of a 16 verse, Matthew chapter 5, referring to decisive aspects of Christian living, 17 verse 29. Go through, we need to look, we need minds. So, lessons to this is all Christians, the group of Christians are to be like. There's no exception. You don't exceptions for people from the south and people from over there. It is the case, go through lives, if we were to the stock market continually goes, if you were to beginning years of the stock market out, it's all, there's some dips, absolutely. But it still comes at least to where it was, and can you continue growing in the faith. For the Christian, that's called growing in the faith. You look at the qualification, with the exception of being a man, husband of one, being a novice, qualification for an elder, mark of a maturing Christian. Find those references and across a Bible and other places in Paul's writing where he mature Christians. Thing there is to know about being a Christian. You just knew, I got to do this now. And she's just beginning, and all along and drawing, helping her learn more and more and more as. And then when you run up, how do I handle this? For. That's what elders are for. You go to the elders and say, I do. When I've asked an elder, or asked, no, help, because that's their shepherds. That's. Secondly, all manifest all of these characteristics. Now, again, as you take if you were to graph it out, there might be areas where you'd have a dip. You know, your spouse. Oh, yeah. What do I do? Okay. There's a job. Have a, that dips a little bit. Come through it, you're strong. Gotten better at this thing called being a Christian. You've had, and the preacher holds your hand, you ask him a question, happened to me. Why did it happen to me? Happened to me. I said, happened to me. Well, I love you to death, but you're not. I didn't say it that way. I didn't say it that way, but in a tender-hearted way. Listen, love y'all, but special. Why? Well, if God loves me and I'm a Christian, He shouldn't let this. Why would He pick you out? Yes. Count it all joy, my temptations. Why? Because He is always watching you and is always you how you respond to tribulations and woes of this life. How can you do that? How can you? I'll see you in the resurrection. Talk about it. Oh, wait a minute. I won't go there. But it's the idea that when you realize, okay, before, when we were in Turkey, what the Grand Ottoman Emperor, and it must have covered blocks. So, and it, of course, it's dim. They didn't have street. And I'm standing at the top of this slight rise down that way. I'm hearing this creak, creak. House is creaking. And I look, and there's this of lumber up the street. Car, there is no donkey, there's, and I'm fixing to make sure the way is clear. And I look spindly little underneath it. I mean, it's a stack of lumber. And there's, if he was with a concrete block in his hand, he was, they strapped a frame to his back and started stacking lumber on top of him until he could. He said, that's, and he step at a time. Just one coming up that hill. Now, you got the world on your back. The job is to take one more up the hill. You just have to take one more step to the top. Or to manifest these characteristics, all characteristics refer to not to natural. It's a natural tendency to not go back to sleep. It's and I nice and warm, tired, kind of a thing. Among whom also conversation of our flesh, desires of and were by children of wrath. That word actually want to have a formal definition, but it means the way you are because of the past. Let me give you an example. Wear glasses. I'm standing here going like this. Okay. Glasses up. And when they're not, okay, put them back. My wife would, and we're permanently, okay. But a way of doing by the way you are by nature, the way you behave, and you have things in a certain way. Now, okay, here's another example. Supper. We here, equipment congregation, at the slap the end. Supposed to do it that way? What happened? What's the problem? There's no problem. They just decided to move to deal. Preaching with Charlie Cox. He was in Virginia, plumb out and there from here. Okay. And the kind of member of the building they had is old in there for dirt, I guess. No screen, no central heat and air. During the you got the windows open if you're lucky. What Lord's Supper sitting on the table eyes. So they put a cloth over top of it. Now, when they and screens on the windows, and put it away. Church. Where's the cloth? We can't put cloth on it. Okay. Course of action. All of these characteristics, essential, difference, genuinely Christ, and the non. Look at this list. You can say, well, not that way. Okay. Take it in line. Here, that's why we have Bible classes. Worship is. That was, but it wasn't mine. Okay. Speaking, we won't go off, but it's the idea that we as we are growing better at being Christian. That's the growing in the faith. The things I look back on years. I feel I should go back in a they're not but I should go back in a and I'm trying to tell them everything I know. And I was trying to answer every quibble that I had in any study. You can't do that. A fifth one is characteristics contrast the two entirely different. I'll read that again. All of these contrast the two entirely different realms, which are heavenly. Christian belongs. If you remember the church of own blood, Acts 20 and verse 2, Acts 2 and verse 4. Kingdom of heaven situation. Build my church, I'll give it not two different organizations. I am former husband, grandfather, uncle, etc., etc., etc. All those different facets of who I am. Form or fashion or another. Kingdom of to Christian and the unchristian has gone turning to its vomit and the pig to its wallet. So, as these critical, recognize yourself. James says we look and we see our really are deficit when we see an area we could either be or do that. Let's not take offense at it. That well then stop. Or so guys in shock, but not in. Okay. So let's generally the term is a state of blessed or happiness. The word blessed in the book. Okay. Okay. It is at least. All right. Giving him another study. Specifically, makarios mean, pronounced it right, you can try it better yourself. A state that is reduced nor but is it implies genuine comfort to not change. Illustration. If the only time is when you're at Disney World and you get weeks a year, you're going to be miserable. Because the only time you're happy is at Disney World. Not the case. With me a little bit. I can. Happy. It's and you can decide whether years old, I was in Virginia, Ohio, decided I was going to be happy. That's not fun. It's sad. If you can help, and you're writing on your, but as a Christian, it says, be joyful, always rejoice. So, first, I'm rejoicing. Secondly, because I live that I can by. Hereby we keep His commandments. 1 John. So, when I read these things, I'm falling short, making correction. Of course, GPS. Think of this as a GPS unit. If I talk long enough, Drew, you ought to walk in the morning. The Beatitudes, the Messiah's subjects. Is the poor in spirit. Who is referred to? Not use the word poor, toil for daily subsistence. You're in. That's not what he said. Not the word he used. Work and at least on at least a level. Ephesians, say verse 17, correct. Steal no more, but rather is honest with his hands and to others. So get a job. Well, oh no. Ditches. I've dug ditches. I've worked on sewer lifts. You're winding to the wrong. So this word is in Matthew and Luke, it being for the one poor and so forth, like chapter 9, 2 Corinthians 9, and the only place that was used by Paul, and he as dispersed abroad the poor, righteousness remaineth given to those that are unable to help themselves. 5 verse 8, if any would not take care of his So the idea that I'm employed as a Christian, I should. Now again, people that can't work. Brother Alderman probably take him a little bit longer. Stuff. Dish anymore. I could my lunch. You need to get the destitute refers to the destitute of learning